Bruneval, France. British paratroopers are tasked with stealing a German radar system that has been helping locate and shoot down Allied aircraft. To do this, they have to drop behind enemy lines and steal vital equipment from Hitler's secret radar station from right under the Germans' noses. A massive firefight is expected, and then the paratroopers have to avoid capture and make their escape by sea. In World War II, some of the most astonishing military raids changed the tide of history. Now, we tell these stories in a way that has never been possible before, using state-of-the-art graphics, expert analysis, live weapon and explosive demos, and first-person accounts from the men who made history. We forensically examine exactly how these actions unfolded, minute by minute. We can now discover whether it was skill, clever tactics, or just luck that carried the day. Flying out of an airfield in Britain are 120 men from C Company, 2nd Battalion of the British Parachute Regiment. They're headed towards the enemy in Bruneval, on the north coast of France. They are a newly formed airborne unit on a deadly mission to steal equipment that's vital to the British bombing campaign against the Nazis. What these men are about to do has never been attempted before. This is the first British airborne raid into enemy-occupied territory, and they have no idea what to expect. At the start of the Second World War, Britain was under siege, with their German enemy having already conquered much of Europe. By 1941, the United Kingdom and the British Commonwealth were the only Allied forces in the fight against the European Axis powers. From their small island, the only way the British can hit back at their enemy is to launch a series of strategic bombing raids on Germany. But the Germans always managed to intercept their aircraft. The British need to know the extent of the enemy's radar capability.
Britain and Germany had been in a race to develop radar technology since the 1930s. Radar was a critical defensive technology that allowed each side to pick up incoming bomber attacks.
Leading C Company on their vital mission into German-occupied France is Major John Frost. Frost is one of the most active of all airborne commanders, and the best man for the job.
To us, waiting inside the aircraft, the past was gone. The present was there, and we strained every nook and cranny of our minds into the future, stretching out across the channel. Pausing, then slowly pulling back home again. It was difficult to talk. The noise and vibration were considerable.
Major Frost is also concerned that the 12 Whitley bombers could be picked up by the very radar they are out to capture.
The Germans had figured out how to use two different kinds of radars together. One, a long wavelength radar, picked up British bombers at a great distance, and the other, a short-range radar, located them precisely when they got closer. The two radars together were highly effective at building a defensive line across northern Europe. If the British can successfully steal the radar, it'll give them a chance to figure out countermeasures against it. The mission to kidnap Hitler's radar system was on.
Specially trained volunteers and Royal Engineers must parachute into Bruneval in northern occupied France, avoiding enemy flak. Pilots must place 120 men and their equipment onto a selected drop zone in the dead of night. C Company will separate into 4 groups, each with their own objective. The Drake Group will position themselves north of the radar station. These men must contain any German counterattacks. The Hardy and Jellicoe groups must seize the radar headquarters in a large villa and the radar itself. Once the area is secure, the Royal Engineers will move into the radar site. The Nelson Group will have to capture and hold the beach, including the beach villa Stella Marie. Once the radar components have been captured, Hardy and Jellicoe groups will retreat to the beach, with the Drake Group covering the withdrawal. Contact must be made with a Royal Naval flotilla waiting offshore. When the beach is secure, landing craft will be sent to evacuate the raiding party, and once aboard ship, taken back to Britain. The radar station is protected by Luftwaffe ground troops, the tactical arm of Germany's Air Force. As soon as these men are stirred, they are guaranteed to provide stiff opposition to any attempts at a beach exit. Within 2 hours, C Company will have to make their rendezvous with the Royal Navy, so they will have to fight their way out. C Company are outfitted in battle dress specifically designed for the paratroopers. This includes the Denison smock, which fastens between the legs, preventing it riding up over their heads as the men make their jump. Each paratrooper is lightly armed, carrying either a pistol, rifle, or Sten gun.
At the start of World War II, the British didn't have their own submachine gun. They needed something which was cheap and easy to mass produce. And this was the result, the Sten gun. About 3 to 4 million of these were produced during the war. This weapon was light and excellent for clearing buildings. It has a 32-round mag and fires a 9mm round, but on the downside, it had a number of vices. It was prone to stoppages due to dirt and debris getting into the exposed working parts. The soldiers would also hold onto the magazine at the side, making it loose and interrupting the flow of rounds going into the chamber. That's why the handle was fitted to the front of the weapon in later models.
In the cockpit of the lead aircraft, the pilot shouts the order to get ready. The bombers make their run-in over the drop zone. C Company is just seconds away from the order to jump. With months of intensive parachute training about to be put to the test. It's up to the skill of the pilot and navigator to time the jump with pinpoint accuracy. If they get it wrong by a matter of seconds, C Company could end up miles from their objective. As they make their drop, C Company is hit by below freezing temperatures. Suspended from their parachutes, these men are prime targets for their German enemy, who are on the lookout for intruders. The most vulnerable time of any paradrop is the landing. They risk injuries, and worse still, they're completely unarmed. Most of their weapons are dropped in separate containers, so they have to find them, and quick. The CLE equipment canister was used by the British paratroopers to transport equipment beneath the aircraft. Attached to a parachute, a colored light illuminated on impact, making it easy for the troops to locate. The canister split lengthways for unloading and could carry up to 600 pounds of kit. Leading the Nelson detachment is 2nd Lieutenant Ewan Charteris. At just 21 years old, Charteris is one of the youngest officers of the force and is tasked with capturing the beach exit and eliminating enemy positions on either side of the cliff. As Charteris gathers his men, he immediately realizes that something is wrong. Half the group is missing, and even more alarmingly, they have landed in the wrong valley.
The valley into which we should have fallen looked very like the right one, but there was no row of trees at the bottom of it, as there should have been, and it was not deep enough. I don't mind saying that that was a nasty moment. I felt very lost.
Completely unfamiliar with the surrounding terrain, Charteris has to take a gamble. He calculates that the men are likely to have been dropped too soon, which means they must head north. Charteris now has the added problem of reaching his objective along a route that he had not planned for. Operation Biting is already jeopardized. C Company of Britain's 2nd Parachute Battalion had made their landing in Bruneval on the French north coast. It is Britain's first ever airborne raid into enemy-occupied territory. Their mission is to capture a top-secret radar, but a plane load of paratroopers is missing, having landed at the wrong drop zone. While Lieutenant Charteris makes his way to his beach objective, the remainder of C Company are at the main drop zone. On the ground and completely exposed to the enemy, they have to get to their weapons and explosives. Without them, they are extremely vulnerable. Commanding Officer Major Frost soon realizes that Lieutenant Charteris and his men are missing. It's their job to secure the escape. Despite this massive setback, Frost must continue with the plan regardless. He'll have to worry about how they get out later.
A plan has to be flexible. You have to think quickly on your feet. During the actual cut and thrust of battle, things can change quickly. When this happens, the commander on the ground makes a dynamic risk assessment. In this case, it becomes mission critical. Complete the task at all costs, even if it means losing more men than anticipated.
Major Frost and his men set off towards their objective, with the Hardy and Jellicoe groups tasked with capturing the villa and radar station. The Drake group moves to the north to deal with the expected resistance and possible counterattack that would come from the German troops stationed at a wooded area known as Rectangle. The Nelson Group must push on to their objective, to capture and secure the beach. But the group's commander, Lieutenant Charteris, with 20 men, is still nearly 2 miles from the rest of the group and is recalculating their new route to the beach. In Lieutenant Charteris' absence, the Nelson Group has a new commander. He is 20-year-old Captain John Ross.
The worry being a first time is that you've no one to tell you the things to look out for. And there was no one who could give us advice. That was on our minds the whole time.
Ross divides his men into two. The heavy section, armed with a machine gun, will attempt to open the road down to the beach, while the light section, armed with submachine guns and rifles, are ordered to tackle the 3 pillboxes on the northern cliffs below the radar. Frost understands time is of the essence. What he doesn't know is the radar station tracked the bombers as they approached, and the British paratroopers have been spotted by the Luftwaffe on the ground. In response, a platoon based at the village of La Poterie, 3 miles inland, is immediately dispatched to reinforce the 60 Luftwaffe troops already stationed at Rectangle. These men are equipped with standard small arms and machine guns, such as the Luger semi-automatic pistol, the Mauser KAR-98K rifle, the MP-40 submachine gun, and the MG-42. Not only do the Germans outnumber the British paratroopers, but they have superior weaponry. The radar station itself is protected by a machine gun post and barbed wire, but the real test is down at the beach. Around the beach exit, are another series of defenses, including machine guns, a roadblock, barbed wire, and the Villa Stella Marie. Each of these defenses have to be cleared by Nelson Group to secure the beach exit. One section will assault guard room, a casement and machine guns presumed to be manned by 5 German defenders located on a knoll to the south overlooking the beach exit. Another group will take on Redoubt, a system of 3 pillboxes and trenches on the northern cliffs above the beach. A smaller group will disperse to deal with the expected advances made from the remaining German beach garrison situated in Bruneval, just 500 yards from the beach defenses.
In military doctrine, it's easier to defend than attack. As a rule of thumb, you need twice as many troops to take a position than to hold it. In the case of Bruneval, German defences were solidly dug in, making it tough for any invading force to get close, let alone take the position.
Unexpectedly, the Luftwaffe ground forces are slow to react, and reinforcements are yet to arrive. So for now, C Company has got the advantage, but it won't have for long. Major Frost leads the men of the Hardy and Jellicoe groups towards their objectives, just 600 yards away. The Hardy group's first task is to clear the large villa that serves as the radar station headquarters and take out some of the defending troops. Frost sends the Jellicoe group to the left to close in on the radar station, while Hardy approach the villa's entrance. The signal to storm the villa is a blast from Frost's whistle.
According to the plan, silently and stealthily we surrounded the villa. And when everybody was in position, I walked to the door.
In that moment, all hell breaks loose. Frost and his men burst through the downstairs rooms of the villa, armed with Sten guns and Mills grenades.
The Mills grenade. It was a great infantry weapon and designed to clear ground in front of advancing troops. It was shaped like a pineapple and made of cast iron for greater grip and greater fragmentation. There was none of this over-the-top stuff. You might get your arm caught in a branch. You literally took the pin out, punched it through, and you got rid of it.
Moving in and out of the rooms, the Hardy group meet no resistance, except for a lone German who is caught firing down on the paratroopers surrounding the villa. With a lucky burst from a Sten, he's instantly killed.
At this point in the war, Britain had very little to celebrate, because of course her forces had been pushed off the continent of Europe in 1940, and there'd been almost a year of unrelieved German victories. So a mission like this could show both Russia and America that Britain still had fight in her and would be a viable ally in years to come.
Outside, the men from the Jellicoe group, tasked with securing the radar station, are fighting hard. It isn't long before they are challenged by a German sentry. He is swiftly shot dead. The men proceed to clear out all remaining defenders. Within just an hour of landing behind enemy lines, Frost's men have completed their first major objective, clearing the villa. So far, the mission is going according to plan. The Jellicoe group now turn their attention to the radar, but it's heavily fortified with barbed wire. Major Frost sends word for the engineers to move forward. But the firefight has alerted an increasing number of Germans along the coastline. The engineers have to move fast. Once they are through the barbed wire boundary, they are confronted with the Würzburg, the king of radar technology. The Würzburg was the primary short-range radar for the Luftwaffe and the German Navy, capable of detecting incoming targets up to 25 miles away. To maximize its capability, the Würzburg was used in conjunction with the long-range Freya system. The Freya would spot and track incoming aircraft, and the Würzburg would determine the exact range and height when the aircraft came closer. The equipment of the Würzburg at Bruneval was housed in a small shed located at the base of the dish. Installed on a trailer, it was a mobile device, which could be dismantled by folding in half. The engineers are ready to begin the main work of the night: the stealing of Hitler's radar secrets. They are guided by an RAF radar expert, Flight Sergeant Charles Cox. Cox was an airman mechanic and has no combat training. His first parachute jump was just 6 weeks ago.
We began the work we had been detailed to do. First, cutting the radio element, which was done by a sapper with a hacksaw. I followed with the cable from the aerial to the box. We removed the transmitter, and then another box with cathode rays on it, and then 2 more boxes.
More men are moved in to protect the engineers while they photograph other parts of the equipment. But as the engineers continue to dismantle and photograph the radar, they come under heavy fire from the enemy at Rectangle, the wooded area nearby.
While we were engaged on this task, we came under fire from rifles and machine guns from the woods behind us. 2 bullets hit the apparatus, but most of the machine gun fire went high. I didn't pay much attention at the time.
For the time being, the paratroopers have enough weapons to put up a fight. But if the enemy bring heavier weapons into play, especially mortars, the operation will be over, and surrender will be the only option for C Company. C Company has stormed and taken control of Hitler's top secret Würzburg radar station. But German forces are retaliating. With the radar drawing heavy German fire, Major Frost orders some of his men from Hardy, based at the Villa, to redeploy around the radar station.
When the enemy resistance begin to rally, C Company know they have to act fast. Getting into a firefight when they're increasingly outnumbered and outgunned is the worst possible option. They need to keep the engineers and radar technology safe at all costs. Stay focused on the task, get the job done, and get out of there fast.
The enemy is becoming more organized and more determined. The Germans now know the movements of the paratroopers, and their fire is becoming more accurate. Major Frost will soon have to turn his attention to getting his men and the captured equipment out. It's the job of Nelson Group to clear and secure the beach. However, Lieutenant Charteris and 20 of his men landed nearly 2 miles short of the target, and they are now having to navigate a new route to the beach to link up with the rest of Nelson.
We pushed off in a diamond formation, myself in the lead, moving at a rapid walk or kind of lope, about 6 miles an hour.
But without Lieutenant Charteris, Captain Ross has taken charge of the remaining Nelson Group. An improvised scheme to capture the area around the beach exit with much fewer men is underway. The assault section of Nelson Group is en route to take and hold the German pillboxes on the northern cliff. The assault team charges the first pillbox, expecting heavy casualties. Surprisingly, there is no return fire. the pillbox is unmanned. The assault force are under orders to remain there and defend it. Ross advances with the heavy section, whose task is to clear the defenses around Villa Stella Marie. They move down a ravine, but are quickly spotted. Ross is immediately pinned down by an MG-42 positioned on the south cliff.
The MG-42, aka Hitler's buzzsaw. It had a murderous rate of fire at 1,500 rounds per minute. It was belt-fed, fired a 7.92 round. It was a beast and needed to be manhandled. Due to the high rate of fire, the barrel got really hot. But with the MG-42, it wasn't a problem. It was estimated that a good team could change this barrel in 7 seconds.
The Nelson team is outgunned and outnumbered, and the Germans are letting them have it. A full-scale battle erupts along the road to the beach, and neither side shows any signs of backing down.
We had a sergeant and 2 privates, and that was really our total armament. And we were not big enough and not nearly strong enough to carry out an attack on the beach. And so they just had to sit there and be fired at.
When a troop is pinned down, tactical awareness is vital. They must retreat safely and regroup from a defensive position. Once fallen back, a new plan could be formulated. Maybe assault from another direction, or, if it's available, call in backup.
Back at the radar station, the engineers come across the bulk of the vital electronics Sergeant Cox is looking for. These are the heart of the machine.
The importance of radar was that it gave you a very significant step in terms of air superiority. And air superiority would be crucial to the course of the war. So the seizure of any of this technology was extremely useful, because it meant that you could start to develop methods of your own to either defeat the technology or to build on it, to build better radars of your own for detecting the enemy or for guiding your bombers.
But C Company is running out of time, and the enemy is closing in.
During the whole period of working at the equipment, bullets were flying much too close to be pleasant. But while we were working at the back, we were protected by the metal of the dish itself.
The Mauser is the Luftwaffe's most efficient means of targeting the engineers.
The KAR-98 was a German bolt-action Mauser. It was based on a simple World War I design and was the German soldiers' basic weapon. It could be fitted with a bayonet, telescopic sight, or even a rifle grenade. The weapon was easy to use and maintain, and very accurate. Even your bog-standard soldier could use this weapon to devastating effect, particularly in the sniper role. But I'm going to demonstrate how fabulously accurate this weapon was by firing it at 50 yards, trying to knock that egg off the post. This is 50 yards, but the best World War II German snipers could guarantee a headshot from 400 yards. 8 times this range.
As enemy fire intensifies, Cox and his engineers use a hammer, chisel, and crowbar to rip out the remaining components, and these are loaded onto a cart.
I was getting a little worried. The German fire was increasing. It came from 2 machine guns, both of which were well served. The enemy were getting increasingly active, and at that moment, I saw 3 vehicles with sidelights running up the road. I thereupon gave the order to withdraw to the beaches.
Major Frost might not know it yet, but the beach is still not open, so the men on the cliffs are going to have to fight their way down.
The Brits chose an airborne unit to parachute into enemy territory, but getting out is far from simple.
This is a landscape of steep valleys, woods and thick snow. It's virtually impossible to land a plane. The only way out is by sea. When you extract from a different route, it is essential that supporting units clear and secure it as part of the main plan.
The men from the Hardy and Jellicoe groups make their withdrawal from the radar station down towards the beach. The trouble is, the escape route isn't open, and half of Nelson are pinned down. The Germans finally have the upper hand. Frost leads his men down the steep cliff towards the pillboxes. As enemy fire intensifies, Frost soon realizes the German defenders have reoccupied the villa. It's taken a while for the Germans to reorganize, but now they threaten to overwhelm C Company. Although the Hardy Group must protect the engineers, laden with vital radar equipment, Major Frost has no choice but to return to the villa and fight off the Germans. Frost's unit charges with guns blazing, and the German advance is soon halted. The situation around the villa now stabilized, Major Frost and his men return to Sergeant Cox and the engineers. A troublesome machine gunner is silenced, and for now, the men are safe to continue their advance back down towards the beach. Still with just a handful of men from Nelson, Captain Ross and his section clear the barbed wire defenses along the beach exit ahead of the engineers. But it's not long before Ross hears gunfire in the distance. It means only one thing, that Lieutenant Charteris is close by. Lieutenant Charteris and his team from Nelson move through the town of Bruneval and finally make it to the south end of the cliff face surrounding the beach. Tasked with clearing the beach defenses, they split in two. One section peels off to the right to sweep up the Germans holding the south cliff, while the others make their way down to the beach to join up with Captain Ross and the rest of Nelson. Opposition on the hill is swiftly eliminated, including the machine gun that had hit Sergeant Major Strawn. Meanwhile, floating offshore is the Royal Navy, who are to provide the third and vital element of the raid, the beach evacuation. 8 landing craft are to wait off the beach until they are signaled to move in and lift off the whole paratrooper force. But they are having problems of their own. Radio communication between the Navy and C Company has broken down, and their only method of evacuation is compromised. Completely unaware of the situation, Major Frost is fighting his way down to an extraction point that may never materialize. C Company is making its final attempt to clear and secure the beach for their withdrawal. Their only means of escape is by sea, but radio communication with the Royal Navy has been lost. Without the landing craft, C Company risks being completely stranded. They could be captured or killed. It's taken Lieutenant Charteris over an hour to join up with the rest of Nelson Group and clear the beach exit. Finally down on the shore, he is about to fulfill his main objective: to capture the strategically positioned villa, Stella Marie.
It's a key communication post for the Germans, with full view of the British ships and landing craft arriving on the shore, and it's where all the ammo is kept for the defences nearby. These must be put out of action as they are blocking Frost's unit from reaching the beach and safe evacuation.
To take control of the beach and free Frost's men from heavy fire, Charteris must take and secure the villa Stella Marie. Lieutenant Charteris storms the road with his section, and with their Bren guns they open fire on the enemy, who are still targeting Ross and his men.
This is the Bren gun, the British light machine gun. It's a really chunky, good piece of kit. is a support weapon. Its main aim is to suppress the enemy, keep their heads down, and this weapon does just that. The Bren gun is instantly recognisable by this curved magazine. It's actually housed on top, which is pretty unusual. As such, the sights are at the side of the barrel. It can fire from either the hip, in the shoulder, or as you can see, it's got a bipod at the front to be able to fire in the prone position. The magazine houses 30 .303 rounds, which pack a real punch. The Bren gun was loved by the British Army. Incredibly accurate. Up to 500 yards, it could hit anything.
Charteris storms the villa, opening fire and throwing grenades.
I stood by the door and shouted, "Handerhoch! Oaf! Come here!" I pulled it open and found myself in a guard's room in which there was one German, a corporal called Schmidt.
Amazingly, the path to the beach is now clear, and Frost can order a full withdrawal. With Corporal Schmidt taken prisoner, the beach is at last under British control. Now on the beach, C Company is ready to make its escape. But the signalers still can't make contact by radio to the landing craft waiting offshore. And despite the beach being clear, the Germans around the cliff top are still firing on them. Frost's men must form a defensive perimeter around the beach.
All-round defence normally offers protection, but needs some natural cover to be effective. But here, in this position, they are utterly exposed. Major Frost must be wondering what his plan B is if the Germans mount a counterattack. Sea one side, cliff on the other, and the men stuck in the middle. If Frost can hold out, he might just get them out in time before the German guns arrive. If he doesn't, they'll have to surrender.
The beach is now becoming full of men pulling back from contact with the enemy. But German reinforcements are approaching Bruneval from the northeast, and the garrison based at Rectangle continues to press the northern perimeter. Before long, the Germans are bound to appear in strength and armed with heavier weapons. C Company has to hold out until the Navy arrive, but there's every chance this could end in complete carnage. Things are going from bad to worse. The weather is closing in, and the radios are still not working. Ross suggests flares. There is no reaction to them from the Navy.
It looked as though we were going to be left high and dry once more, and the thought was hard to bear. The great cliffs each side of the little beach seemed to lean over and dominate us with ever-growing menace.
Worse, by firing flares, C Company has now completely revealed their position to the Germans.
At this point, C Company is so close to pulling the raid off successfully, but they're at a moment of extreme danger.
Their position is now exposed, and the radio signalers are struggling to communicate with the landing craft. In desperation, a second round of flares are fired. This time, the signal works, and the Navy recognized that C Company is ready to make its exit. C Company has been fighting for over 2 hours when all 8 landing craft reach the beach. First, and most importantly, Sergeant Cox and the engineers come forward with the captured radar equipment. Every man on the beach knows this particular embarkation takes priority. Finally, the men are aboard their vessels and begin the voyage back to Portsmouth. Of the 120 men involved in Operation Biting, 2 were killed, with 6 missing, presumed captured. In this newsreel footage of C Company's return, their faces revealed that this was indeed success on all fronts. C Company made their landings, achieved their objectives, and completed their vital mission according to plan. A remarkable feat for one of the first operations of its kind. Of major importance was the information discovered by the engineers and from a German prisoner, which would play a key role in Britain's battle for radar supremacy.
Some very interesting things were discovered about the Würzburg radar equipment. One of them was this radar system could be defeated. And over time, systems such as Window, the dropping of aluminium strips, which would confuse the radar as to the number of aircraft in the sky and their location, were evolved. And it was advances like this which were crucial to the course of the entire war.
Not only did the intelligence retrieved from the Würzburg radar contribute to Britain's advance in the war, but the raid itself proved that there was a future for airborne forces, both as raiders and invaders.
The decision to use British paratroopers gave an unprecedented opportunity to use relatively untested men and unproven techniques in combat. Their experience helped shape the future training and tactics for airborne operations, including, crucially, how the soldiers were carried to the drop zone.
The raid was successful because it was the first victorious landing in German-occupied territory and showed that the British had a cadre of professional airborne troops that rivaled those of the Nazis.
After Operation Biting, the Parachute Regiment was expanded and a 2nd Airborne Division was raised. By the time of the Normandy invasion in June 1944, Britain had the men and equipment to carry out large-scale operations against the enemy. In May 1942, Lieutenant Ewan Charteris was awarded the Military Cross for his actions on Operation Biting. 7 months later, Charteris was killed in action in North Africa at just 21 years old. Sergeant Charles Cox was awarded a Military Medal for Bravery for his leading role in Operation Biting. After the war, Sergeant Cox returned to his roots and opened his own electrical store. Captain John Ross went on to North Africa in late 1942 and was later promoted to Major and awarded the DSO for his services, all at just 21 years old. Major John Frost went on to command a battalion in North Africa and Italy. His heroism in the Battle of Arnhem in 1944 led the Dutch to rename the bridge there in his honor. Frost continued to serve in the Army after the war, rising to the rank of Major General. To this day, airborne forces remain a major part of any army. Helicopters have largely replaced mass drops by aircraft, but parachuting remains a key part of a modern paratrooper's training. Operation Biting set a precedent for future airborne raids. The actions and bravery of the men from C Company will be celebrated and remembered forever.